YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back with another episode of Terrible Take Tuesday, taking a look at some terrible takes found by you guys and sent in through our Twitter throughout the sports world here. A lot of people sent me the same ones, so there's a lot of duplicates, so I just went with the first person that sent it to me. And I apologize if you expect to be on here or make the cut. Appreciate anybody who kind of played along here. We got all kinds of content on the channel, more to come. Getting ready for the NFL season. Please help us reach that 60K goal by week one of the NFL. Full coverage in season. Cannot wait for my favorite videos on the channel, the weekly picks videos. We're almost there. Very exciting time. Goat House NFL, that's our Twitter. You're going to want to follow that for updates on the channel and for the NFL. And then check out that podcast episodes every single week. Link down in the description, the comments for anything that you may need. We got a basketball terrible take sent in by Justin Miller. Somebody did one of these, build a team with $15. There's different tiers, and what's just completely terrible about this is you see LeBron James, arguably the greatest player of all time, in my opinion, the second best player in NBA history, is down there at $3. In the same category as Yao, McGrady, Dwight Howard. Little ridiculous. I don't think I'm surprised by this, that anybody out there would make this. It almost feels like kind of like a trolling type thing. I feel like he would be in the $5 tier every single time. It's interesting to think. I mean, you have his teammate Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade was fantastic career, but you have his teammate Dwayne Wade ahead of him. Interesting to think though who you would actually put at that $5 tier. It's hard to say none of those those four guys up there aren't deserving of it, but maybe if I had to choose, take Allen Iverson, put him down to the $4 tier, or even the 3 wouldn't be out there. Obviously, his talent was ridiculous, his skill, but LeBron James, I mean, not having him, I think it would be terrible if he was in the $4 tier. It would still make this series. But the fact that he's not $5 tier is just absolutely ridiculous and down at $3. I actually didn't think about, when I'm making this, I didn't think about what I would choose. Obviously, we're choosing LeBron James. That's $3. I think you got to go Kobe Bryant, too. Bryant, possibly the third best player of all time. So then we're at $8. And, I mean, you got to build a starting five, though, so that's pretty tough. I'd probably, Ray Allen, maybe the greatest shooter of all time, only $1. I definitely want to go with him. And then you could go with, what is that? That's Kobe plus LeBron. That's 8, 9. Maybe you're getting Shaq, getting the Bear. I'm a big Garnett type of guy, though. I'm a big Garnett guy. So that's $13. And then we need $2 extra. And, I mean, you can't go wrong with any of those guys. Get Gasol back with Kobe, possibly. Melo in his prime. Melo in his prime is pretty appealing. So I might go that route, actually. So, I mean, you can easily build a dominant team with this just based on the dollar amount. Either this person was kind of trolling, they're not really high on LeBron, or they're very high on LeBron and kind of just wanted him to be $3 so everybody can pick LeBron. But it makes its way on to the Terrible Take Tuesday series. Back to the NFL from Simon here, the all product of the system offense. So basically system guys that, they're not saying they wouldn't have been good without the system, but they're kind of getting close to that. They're mainly good because of their system they were in, is basically what they're trying to say. And this is all sorts of terrible. There is a lot of people out there that believe Tom Brady is a product of the system. And then people want to say Belichick right away, greatest coach of all time. And he is, and he's a fantastic general manager as well. But he's really not the offensive system guy. I think it was, for the most part, it was kind of built around Tom Brady, and you can see the greatness, the clutch. Those things have nothing to do with the system. The ball placement, just going out there and winning, have that winning mentality and being a winner. So I would disagree strongly with that. Marlon Mack, I would disagree too. A lot of people think, and they might be true, they might be right, that he wouldn't be as good without his offensive line. Maybe it's opinion-based, but I don't think that's system. I think he has a good offensive line. That has nothing to do with the actual system in place. They do want to run the ball a lot, but a lot of teams do, and a lot of teams have been like that throughout the history of the NFL. So I like Marlon Mack a lot. I liked him out of South Florida a lot, but I would agree that maybe the offensive line helps him a bit. He would still be good with other offensive line, but maybe not as good. I could agree with that, but calling him a system guy, I don't. Maybe that's opinion, but I don't think this being a system guy is the same as having a good offensive line. I guess that's part of the system. That's just my take. Adam Thielen is confusing to me on here too because the Vikings have been known as just wanting to run the ball, give the ball to the backs, and it's a big reason why Stephon Diggs left is because they don't air the ball out enough. Because when they do, they're successful. So Thielen, I think would be much better in an offense that actually threw the ball more because we know he's a fantastic route runner, knows how to get open. He's a good receiver, very good receiver. I think he'd be better on a team that threw the ball more. So I almost think the system could be. Maybe a couple years ago it wasn't holding him back, but I think around now it could be holding. If anything, I'm not saying it's completely holding him back, but if anything, maybe slightly holding him back. So I would not call him a system guy whatsoever. Chris Godwin's an interesting one. You definitely can debate this because first glance, Bruce Arians comes in. A very important role to him is kind of getting that, that slot receiver that can do about anything. You don't want to. A lot of teams like just a shifty guy. Doesn't matter his size, just shifty guy in the slot. Not Bruce Arians. Chris Godwin's the perfect role for that. So it's kind of the centerpiece. The piece that will get the most production. So if you look at it that way, yeah, that's why his production went up. You can't ignore his talent because you have to have talent to do it, and you can't ignore that the production just doesn't come free. He has to be able to go out there and produce. But anyway, I would disagree with him being, though, even though you can make the argument what I just said, because to me, he's just that talented. Somebody has to fill that role. You have to be good enough to fill that role. You can't just put anybody in there. And, I think he's the perfect type of player for that role. So, and he's more than just like a slot receiver. You see him play outside a ton as well, at times with just those two receivers and Mike Evans out there. So, I would disagree strongly with that. And Edelman, maybe the stats, the production went up because he had the greatest player of all time who happens to be on this list, Tom Brady. I don't know if I would call. I don't call that. Some people will. I don't call that a system if another player helped them be great. From good to great. I don't know if I consider Hooper with the Falcons maybe. Mostert with the Niners. Mostert's a really good. Hooper's really good. He's in a good system with the Browns. Mostert, it looks like any running back, and he's good too. Hard runner, improving every day. For sure, but it looks like any running back that steps in there is going to be pretty solid. It's a very good system, especially with the outside runs there. So I can't argue with those, really. But the other ones are quite ridiculous. Moving on to the next one here, we got not Alex Batchelder, hopefully I'm saying that right, projecting top 10 wide receivers in 2020. So this is Bleacher Port from 2016. They're projecting now, actually, 2020, who will be the top 10 wide receivers in football. And I guess debatable if this is terrible or not, because this is very hard to do, going 4 years forward into the future. And there's some really good players on here, but then you see a guy like Kevin White, on there, and that obviously didn't work out, no longer with the Bears, and just somewhat of a bust so far. So, and that's unfortunate, but yeah, that's kind of where they missed it. And then we actually see Michael Thomas on the list though, so they got that. So that makes it a pretty good take too. So you kind of go back and forth here. Yeah, I don't know if it's in order. Sammy Watkins, number 3. He's been good with the Chiefs, but very interesting. And Odell was looking like he could be that good, maybe the number 2 receiver, but I don't know if he's been that recently. Definitely interesting, though. And you see Jarvis Landry with the Dolphins there. Devontae Parker, actually, definitely not top 10 receiver, but was looking like somewhat of a bust and really broke out last year. So this is an interesting one. Definitely debatable here. Just seeing Kevin White makes it interesting for sure. Next, we got from rferg26 QB rankings from an Instagram account here. And this is interesting. I mean, there's some things that are definitely debatable here that most people would probably disagree with. Like who's where and who's ahead of who. But what we all can agree on, Tom Brady at number 27 is absolutely ridiculous. Some people think he'll play like a top 5 quarterback this year. Some people top 10. Some people maybe top 15. I don't think anybody has him down here at 27. Like you're telling me Dwayne Haskins, I believe in. You tell me he's going to play better. Daniel Jones, Tua hasn't played yet, but I believe in him, and I think he can make a big impact as a rookie. But still, ahead of Tom Brady, I'd put Drew Lock ahead of some of those guys that I mentioned. I just don't get the logic of you just think maybe they just think Tom Brady is just done. He's washed up. But even that, even if he's just not the same, I still don't see him this far down here, especially with the talent around him. I feel like he's going to play like he's got something to prove here, of course. So I just got to completely disagree, and that's, I guess, why it makes its way on to Terrible Take Tuesday here. And then moving on to some cornerback tiers sent in by Lalo Revilla. We got, something that stood out right away to me, and there's probably a number of corners that should be on this that are not, and we can talk about that in the comments, but one that stands out is I don't notice Marcus Peters on here, who I would actually consider, it depends on what you're calling the tiers, I would consider in tier 1, but at the lowest tier 2, and I don't see him on all here. I think one of the better playmaking corners in football. And then you look to, I don't really have a problem with tier 1. Those are top 3 guys potentially, but I would consider Marcus Peters in there. But you look at tier 2, there's some guys that I probably wouldn't, but they're debatable in terms of putting him up there. But then one that I don't think really anybody will is James Bradbury. He's shown flashes early last year, maybe first 6 games, then kind of went back to normal there. So I don't know if I put him tier 2 based on his contract maybe. So that I thought that was interesting. I don't know. It's just there's a lot we can talk about here. This guy being ahead of this guy, below this guy. So who they're missing here. But what stood out to me is Marcus Peters. Not even on this list. It's pretty. And some guys that they decided to put on this list, that would be lower tier guys. It's just one of those things that it's just really a mess. It's kind of all over the place. I guess maybe in my opinion, but I think a lot of people's opinions. So. This is one we got to talk about in the comments, everyone's thoughts on that. Well, let's hear it. And then next we got from Joel Smith, players by category AFC East. So best offensive players, and then best defensive, most overrated, and then most underrated. Obviously some debatable things, nothing terrible, but definitely things you can argue at the top here. But in terms of the most overrated and underrated, I would agree with or I would disagree actually with with all of those. I think overrated. James White I would actually think is a little underrated, and Micah Hyde's definitely I think is underrated. Marcus May I wouldn't put in either category, but I don't think he belongs in this. And Eric Flowers is probably the only one that I would agree with, because all of a sudden people think he's a very solid guard. Maybe he can be, but and then underrated. Sony Michel's debatable. Some people actually call him overrated, but I would actually agree with the underrated. I think he's better than what last year showed production-wise. I know some people are a little disappointed if they had him on fantasy. Le'Veon Bell is most certainly not underrated. I don't know if Byron Jones is underrated. Definitely not overrated, but I don't think he's underrated. And Josh Norman's most certainly not underrated. Maybe this person thinks to be better with the Bills, so better than people expect. I can understand that. I wouldn't call him underrated. So I don't know. The overrated and underrated on this list is a little all over the place to me, but I guess it's not super terrible. It's just a little, I don't know. It's just a little out there. And then we got from Tristan Chapin, we got AFC North record predictions with the Ravens 14-2, which is doable. That's a lot of expectations, but doable. The Browns 10-6. The talent on the team may say close to there, around there, so okay. But the Steelers down at 4-12 is ridiculous. If we saw Big Ben go down last year, and that was the reason really they didn't make the playoffs. He's back this year. He is coming back from an interesting injury. More news about that coming out today, actually. An injury that there hasn't been really any players that have come back from. So that's interesting. But they won 8 games last year without him. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to, if you got out, they would win 8 games again, or maybe even in that range. But I just think overall it's very, very unlikely they win only 4 games there. You go 4-12. And the defense is too good. They have offensive talent. They kind of added to that in the receiver unit. Adding Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron. I expect Juju to step up. Deontay Johnson can continue to improve. Even James Washington continue to improve. I think they get better in that category. And getting better in units on the roster doesn't necessarily mean your record improves. People get confused about that sometimes. But I just don't see 4-12. Bengals, I can see it. I think they'll be better than people expect. A little better than 4-12, possibly. They're definitely a team for the future. But yeah, I would say that 4-12 prediction for the Steelers is anything could happen. I guess injuries, you can't really predict injuries, but anything could happen. But it's out there for sure. So, yeah, that's it. Only 7 takes this week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please smash that like button. We all got all kinds of rankings, prediction videos on the way, and then full coverage in the NFL season. So subscribing and turn notifications on would be key there. Would really appreciate that. Please help us reach that 60K goal. That is going to do it for this one, though. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Goodbye.